If a founder has to choose one thing to know about their ideal target customer, what's the one thing?
They need to know what's going on in their mind right now. When they hit up their computer first thing in the morning, what's the first browser tab they open? What do they look at first? What are they using for internal communication? How many meetings do they do a day? What are those meetings about? What is the one thing that's standing in their way of being a hero in their own story? Because it might be different today than it was last week.
Welcome back to The Revenue Recipe. I'm Ben Wiggins on behalf of Celerant and on behalf of Proclaim. As a reminder, go to the link in the description right below my face. For our listeners, go to the show notes to download Celerant's Target Market Workbook, the most effective practical tool to build a real-world ICP, Ideal Customer Profile, a real-world one, not some nebulous thing that lives out in the ether, but a real-world ICP. Go to the link in the description right below my face. Do it now. I'm here with Kenan Rappuchi today. Kenan, what's going on?
We're here just doing our thing, Ben. This podcast thing is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying the chance to riff, combination of about 4 decades of experience now, bringing startups and small businesses to market and growing them. So thanks for the opportunity to chat about it.
Absolutely. All right, so today's pillar is strategy, and we're going to talk about the ICP, the ideal customer profile. What does that really mean?
Yeah, so this simple acronym is the most misunderstood on the planet when it comes to sales and marketing. When we talk about an ICP, there's obviously a lot of opinions and materials and exercises and, strategies to build one, but I'll net it out here very simply. An ICP is nothing but a real world situational assessment of a market, meaning the segment of the industry that your business is that you're selling to operate in. Okay. The target audience, that is a group of people who hold a functional role that are employed by and paid by the companies in your market segment. And then finally, the buyer profile. So your market segmentation, your target audience, and your buyer profile. So quite frankly, some of these elements are given different terms like personas, which is bullshit, right? A persona is a fictitious character. Right. It's great for consumer marketing, okay? But at the end of the day, you still know who your best consumers are, and they're real people. Okay. Yeah. The fictitious persona doesn't buy anything from you. So anyone that's still using the term persona and any exercises or properties around persona, love you, HubSpot. Please take that persona property out of your CRM because it's bullshit. What you need is a profile of a person who's real, who operates in a functional role, and is employed by a company that would represent an ideal account for you. Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about the attributes of that in a minute. And within that target audience, that group of people who influence or make purchasing decisions, these are people, and they have personalities. Yes. And they have motivations. Yes. And they're different, and they may or may not be conflicting or complementary. Okay. Inside the same organization. True. And they often change because the only constant change. Exactly. Yeah. So an ICP, quite simply, is a real world profile of the market that you sell to, the target audience that holds functional roles of responsibility and have objectives and performance standards and reviews and bonuses, if they're any good, that make or influence buying decisions inside that company to reach its mission. Yes. And the people have personalities and profiles. So that's an important part. Those key 3 pieces make up our Target Market Workbook, and it's an asset that we've been using for literally years and years and years to bring countless startups to market and scale. So again, as Ben said, pick up that Target Market Workbook here at the link below. Free. We got you rolling.
It's free, no catch.
So there's no mystery to this. Okay, there's a lot of opinions around it. There's a lot of materials. There's a lot of bullshit around an ICP, and some people just think it's this industry with these titles and these needs. It's a lot more than that.
Tell us about the lot more. Like,
Okay.
what are the most important pieces that are always getting left out of these things?
The things that are getting left out are the real world situation or scenario that's happening with that business and that person and that profile at that time.
Okay. Yeah.
So in order to create an effective ICP, you have to start with that framework. Okay. And that's what this workbook is. It is a framework that's broken down to 3 easily distillable parts. But the overarching component that most people miss is when we build a profile, we don't build it from what we think is going on. We build it from the standpoint of like what an actor calls getting into character. Okay. We need to put ourselves into the shoes of our audience and think the way they're thinking. The challenge with that is, how do I do that, right? Well, the first thing you do is you need to have an understanding of that framework. What market are you selling into? And there's a lot of ways you can get information about that market and the segmentation around it.
What are those?
Generative AI is one. We
Yes.
talked about that in a previous episode, right?
Yes.
So being able to prompt the generative AI tools you're using to find out data that's relevant to your value proposition that your market, generally in your market segments, they're experiencing or attacking. Okay. But again, knowing how to make those prompts your dog, right? Make him do what you tell him to sit up and do, right?
Yeah.
So that's one piece. But then ultimately it's that audience inside the business as well, looking at those functional roles, how they complement, conflict, how they work together in a unified way, if they actually do, to meet the objectives of the business itself. And then ultimately the individuals inside. So knowing those pieces are what's critical to build an effective ICP.
Let me roll you back 45 seconds. So give me a taste. Like give us one prompt that our viewers can plug into ChatGPT or Claude or Jasper or whatever it is that they're using to learn a little bit more about what their ideal customer is thinking about, losing sleep over, what's on their mind right now.
It's a deep prompt. Let's just say we're selling into surveying companies, small to mid-market surveying companies,
Yes.
based in Northeast Texas that cover tri-state region. Okay. So those surveying companies have certain things that they're thinking about, worried about spending most of their time on right now.
Of course.
And someone who might be selling something, for example, maybe a new technology for surveying certain elevations or certain plot types for residential or commercial development.
Yeah.
That company may think that the biggest problem those surveyors have is not being able to get effective data from their sextants and their tripods, and being able to put that data together effectively and get a good survey output and get a good file that their customer wants for the money they want to pay.
Right.
When in reality, the real problem might be that those surveyors using sextants and tripods and that are out in the field, they're kind of old school. There's an old, it's an older profession, and a lot of people are cycling out and retiring.
Okay.
So what's really going on right now in that segment is we need to find a way to adopt technology, but not disrupt the way we're doing business right now. So they're not thinking so much about losing the labor force. They're thinking about how do we replace the labor force. They may not be leading with technology, but they don't know that because they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So they're thinking, oh shit, all of my great surveyors are retiring. What am I going to do to keep my business going? How am I going to have the staff out in the field to do this?
Yeah. Okay. So as the person deploying this technology, where am I going to my LLM or whatever it is to start unearthing the truth of this? Obviously, if you can, a conversation with your ideal client, with a version of your ideal client, is at some point crucial to the process. But where do I begin?
You prompt your AI by saying, we know that if you don't know that the surveyors are retiring, you really need to do some research on your target market. We're going to assume that you already understand the basics about the trends.
You got the groundwork laid.
Yeah, I mean, your first prompt is, what are the evolving trends in the surveying industry right now for small to mid-market surveying companies? So you have some evolving trends.
Sure.
Then you start drilling down. Okay.
Okay.
Is it staff? Is it personnel? Is it technology? Is it cost? Is it variability? Is it dynamics of weather, for example, where if they have to continue to postpone a job because of weather? What are the issues? So then you identify what those issues are, and then drill down to transform them into real world scenarios. An example of that is, okay, I'm a surveying company owner. I've had it for 40 years. I probably want to do this for another 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But I've lost 30 of my best guys over the years. And these younger people don't understand the art of surveying anymore.
Right.
How am I going to keep this business alive? Okay. So what that person's thinking is, how am I going to keep this business alive?
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily correlate that to technology. They correlate that to staff. Okay?
Yes.
And a new generation. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap? So you bridge that gap with a real world scenario of what they're dealing with, and you translate your value proposition to map to how your audience is seeing their problem in their world today. So that comes down to understanding deeper than what an AI prompt can deliver, and more into some of that organic intelligence we were talking about in a previous episode.
Okay.
So this is most challenging when you're an early stage founder.
So now you have that groundwork laid. You've started merging the artificial intelligence with the organic intelligence. How do you continue to then build out that ICP?
Okay, if you're an early stage founder, you need to have a lot of conversations. You actually need to be in the field, figuratively or literally,
Right.
with your ideal audience. And you should know what your target market is because you've already created a product to go solve a problem they have. So you have to base on assumptions and data you have, but then you have to transform yourself to get into the character of your audience.
Okay.
And the way you do that is through having this profile laid out into market dynamics, functional dynamics,
Okay.
and behavioral dynamics.
All right. Let's define each of those a little bit more thoroughly.
Absolutely. So the market dynamics are specific to industry trends, industry platitudes, attitudes,
Yeah.
relationships, okay? And it speaks to what the segment as a market is doing and why they're doing it and what was the catalyst for that.
Yeah.
So some of that more practical material are things like, okay, so what tools and tech is that market segment using right now to solve problems they're having? And the reason you want to know what tools they're using is because yours may or may not complement, conflict, compete, integrate with, right? You need to know what they're doing and what they're using for their tech stack today. And a lot of founders say, why do I need to know that? Well, the reason you need to know that is you have to understand your market entry strategy. And if you've got a product or solution that integrates with, competes with, conflicts with, or is redundant to what they're already using, you don't have a chance to sell to them.
Right.
But that's an industry-wide. In a surveying industry, they're all using these particular pieces of hardware, these particular pieces of software, and that's like a bell curve. 80% of the companies use the same stuff.
Yes.
And so knowing that, walking in, you can have a stance on how to have conversations with the target audience who operate in those industries about things they're dealing with every day. Okay. So that's just one example. You also want to know sort of pieces around their size, their location. For example, a larger enterprise company is going to have a hell of a lot longer buying cycle, but they'll also probably have budget for early adopters and testing innovation. So you got to figure out where you fit in. So that's just one example of sort of the components that you want to look at when you build that ICP as a startup founder. So ultimately, you have to have some data. If you don't have data, you've got to do customer interviews.
Okay.
Those should have been done before you even started building an MVP.
Yeah.
That's called problem solution discovery. That's called, I believe there's a problem here. Let's have some interviews. So I've had a lot of founders come to me over the years and say, I can't get anybody to, answer my emails. I'm asking them for an interview. And I say to them, what's in it for them? Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you're going to ask someone to interview, you're asking them for their time.
Yes.
And they don't know you. And they may look at your LinkedIn profile and see that you you're relatively fresh into the industry, their first thought's going to be, and this has no bearing on you as a person, but their first thought's going to be, I got another interview request. You know what? Some kid is going to pepper me with a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Irrespective if you're a 40 or 50-year-old entrepreneur who's had several exits, I don't feel like I need to be peppered with questions this week.
Right.
Okay.
So then how do you overcome that?
Okay. The way you overcome it is you make presumptions. So a tactic early on, if you need customer data early, this is who I think my ideal customer is. I need to get some data and I need to ask some questions. Okay. So you got to ask for that interview for the chance to ask the questions. So the tactic's going to be, hey, look, I noticed that this is kind of a trend in your industry, and I saw that you guys are doing this. Would love to hear your perspective about why you chose that direction. Can I grab 5 minutes of your time to hear your input on that? Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't use the word interview, and you're not being vague about what you're wanting to discuss, but it's around a specific industry segment point that you learned that you know they're probably dealing with. So you presume that they're doing that, and then that's the person that led that charge. That's more likely to get you that interview.
Just to make sure that our audience fully understands the distinctions we're talking about here, give me one sentence on market dynamics, functional dynamics, behavioral dynamics to make sure they know exactly which one is which.
Market, company, and industry, not people.
Yeah.
Company and industry.
Got it.
Target audience, functional roles and responsibilities and objectives.
Okay.
And they're different. Technology, sales, marketing, ops, accounting, finance.
The department.
Yeah, the functional role.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Department, exactly.
Yeah.
Profile, behaviors, motivations, characteristics, personalities.
Psychographics.
Yes. Essentially, yes. So there's buying behaviors, correct. And our target market workbook goes into that in a bit. That shows a way to really distill that down into a practical, real world.
Link in the description.
Yep, scenario that kind of demystifies some of that. Because a lot of folks, especially technical founders, are like, why do I need to know their primary personality type? And I respond to them and I say, well, let's figure out where that might be useful for you. So let's just say you've found a good prospect. They've expressed interest in your solution. They've asked you what it costs. You've given them a price, and they want to negotiate. Negotiation, by nature, is a contest.
Yes.
Someone's going to win. Someone's going to lose.
Yeah.
What you need to be able to do is make sure that there's a win-win.
Collaborative negotiation.
Knowing the primary personality type, this goes back to your question about psychographics. During a negotiation, knowing your audience's primary personality type is going to put you in a position to be more effective in that negotiation so they feel a win. Here's an example. Okay. So let's just say one of your primary personality types in the buying cycle is an extrovert. Okay. They're outgoing, they're energetic. I might have been accused of that once or twice and oh shit, I don't know.
Who would think such a thing?
Exactly. The horrors. So that person is going to have one style that you negotiate with. And then the other one's like an organized, efficient, more of an introvert. In other words, they just want to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Okay. And this might be the same negotiation with the same customer.
Yeah.
You've got one buyer and you've got one influencer, and the influencer is the purchasing person or the operations person. Okay. And they need to make sure the boxes are checked.
Yep.
So the way those conversations will go independently with each of those primary personalities, the extrovert might be, look, Ben, so glad we had this conversation. I've learned a lot about you, man. I really appreciate you being so open and candid. Look, this is a great deal for both of us. Let's make sure we find a platform that works for our business and yours, where you get the ROI. We get the ability to stay in business and serve you with the caliber of expertise that we know we can, and everybody gets a win and can be a hero in their own story. What does that look like for you? Okay, so that's to the extrovert, right?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about that.
Exactly, okay. The introvert might be, Ben, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time with me during the course of our last 3 weeks as we evaluated our problem solution fit. Part of what you requested was information about our SOC 2 compliance. You also asked about our current capital state. Because we're a startup, you also asked about some client references and our terms and conditions around our contract. We had an opportunity to have your legal counsel look at it and redline it. and we've approved those red lines. So it appears we've hit most of what you asked for. What else might I help give you to help this become a successful alliance for us?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Kenan.
Okay. So you can see there's a difference there. So do we buy from companies or do we buy from people?
We buy from people.
Okay. So that's where that buyer profile comes in, right? And so a lot of people miss that point. They just say, well, my ICP is, they're a surveying company, mid-market size, up to 20 employees, operate in a tri-state region in northern Texas, and they're focusing on cranking out great surveys, topographical surveys for plots up to 40 or 50 acres. And so I'm going to talk to the company owner and the field general, and that's their ICP.
Yeah.
Excuse me? You're missing a few things there.
Yes.
So that's where we go.
Yeah, the level of detail.
Yep.
Is what we keep coming back to. All right, so now let's boil it down. Like if you had to choose one thing, if a founder has to choose one thing to know about their ideal target customer, what's the one thing?
They need to know what's going on in their mind right now, this moment.
With respect to what?
What the most important thing they're dealing with. Let me give you a real world example.
Yeah, please.
When they hit up their computer first thing in the morning, okay, they're in there, they're at their desk.
Where do they go?
What's the first browser tab they open?
Yeah.
What do they look at first?
Okay.
What are they using for internal communication? How many meetings do they do a day? What are those meetings about? What is the one thing that's standing in their way of being a hero in their own story? Because it might be different today than it was last week. When you know what their bookmarks look like, if they have them, okay, what's the first tab they go to? Are they more of an SMS person, or are they more of an email person, or are more of a Zoom or a phone call person? Okay, that's part of the buyer profile.
Yeah.
When they need to share their opinion about something, what's the forum they do that in? Okay?
Yeah.
So knowing what's going on with your audience right now puts you in a position to, when you do that outreach, because let's face it, for startups and small businesses, they're not, all of our ideal customers are not knocking on our door every day going, here's my wallet, I need what you have, how quickly can I pay for it?
Right.
Okay. So we have to reach out to them. Here's what's going on. There's thousands of emails every day, every week that they get, and this guy has no idea what I'm dealing with. They're just trying to pitch me something.
Yes.
As opposed to when you can resonate with what they're thinking about, worried about spending their time on right now, they're going to sort of feel, even if it's subliminal, they're going to, was this person in the shower with me this morning? What the hell? There's something, right? How do they know? Because that looks like, is AI that good? Okay.
Right.
And either way, it's going to resonate with what they're doing.
So how do you manage the level of complexity here? Because you've got everything that, you've got the ground level basics, but then you have the extrovert, introvert, you have the ops person, the purchasing person, you have the marketing person, you have, like all three of the, the market dynamics, the functional dynamics, the behavioral dynamics. And that creates sort of this enormous sprawling 3-dimensional thing that you have to evaluate. How can a person keep track of all of that and stay sane?
So the stay sane part, I can't help you with. Okay? Because some people...
Thanks for tuning into the Revenue Recipe.
Right, exactly. But I can help you with the how does the person handle all that. So, so there's two things. One's abstract, one is very well defined.
Okay.
The abstract is your situational awareness. This is being able to read the damn room, guys.
Yeah.
So I may have referred to this in one of the previous episodes. There's an author by the name of Gino Wickman. He wrote a book called, that's Traction. I'm sorry. Malcolm Gladwell wrote Blink. Okay.
Yeah.
So how can you, great book. How can you navigate tons of data and pull out the pieces that are most important to your situation right now?
Thin slicing.
Thin slicing, you got it. Okay, so you can learn that. You can literally condition your mind to be great at thin slicing. Okay, So that's data, but you also have to have some level of intuition. That's the abstract. The data is logical. Have a good CRM. Have good properties set up. You can that gets filled out with information that's coming in digitally or organically, and you got it on Tableau based reports that you can see. Here's the trends. Yep, I got it. That's easy. That's the easy part. Okay. And again, you can train your mind to do thin slicing. So the more difficult part is the abstract. So if you've never done any play acting, like even in elementary school where, I think you kind of go through a play or something, you have a character, you draw a part, and you read a script, right? This is what an actor calls getting into character. So what this really means is you have to step away from yourself, and it's so incredibly difficult for a founder to do. Why? Because they're conditioned to pitch.
Yes.
VCs want to pitch.
Yes,
I
exactly.
got to sell.
Yeah.
They have pressure on them. Me. I need. But you need me. You need me because I have this and you have this problem.
Yes.
Okay. I get it. We understand that. However, what you're doing is you're not eliciting credibility when you lead with you. Okay. When you lead with an understanding, when you put yourself into the position of your audience, there's an ability for you to craft context and communication that all of a sudden they can understand that, okay, this person I think gets me because they're talking about something that I'm pretty much on my mind right now. Okay. So being able to put oneself in another's character, getting into character takes discipline. It takes focus on situational awareness of your audience. You have to literally disconnect yourself completely from what you want in order to do that successfully. And that's incredibly difficult for most founders. So in order to do that, the practical exercise to get there is essentially being able to look at, just continue to refer back to that ideal target customer profile, hone in on a couple of pieces. What's their specific area of responsibility? How is their success measured? What's the most rewarding thing about their job? What part of it do they dislike the most? Okay. What are their motivations and drivers? Where are they active, and what do they say when they are active online or in person? Always have that as your guidebook. Okay. If you have that profile as your guidebook, what you're doing is you're conditioning yourself to really be where they are based on that profile. And it does evolve, but that then takes the content and the context of your message, and it focuses you more on them instead of more on you. So have this tool at all times. Have it handy. Have it up on one of your bookmarks, okay? Have it be something you're constantly referring to, and you're just like, if you know Anthony Robbins, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you're basically programming your mind to put yourself in the position of an audience. Pretty simple.
That's how you create the crystal ball if we don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, look, none of us do. If we did, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
And the failure rate of founders wouldn't be 90%. Okay.
Yeah.
So the tactic to knowing what your audience is, what their situation is, and what they're worried about, thinking about, spending most of their time on right now, is understanding that there's data around it that you can get with the right AI. Okay. That you should always have integrated with your CRM, always, all times. And it is generative. That means it evolves. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Generates continuous data based on data, it's information it's picked up. So knowing that, and then putting your organic intelligence to work with their profile.
Okay. So now we have our target ideal customer profile. What's next? What's next, Kenan?
Okay.
What do we do?
So now we know what they're thinking about, worried about, spending most of their time right now on, and we know our target market segment. We know our audience. We know our buyer profile. We're in character.
Yes.
We feel good. We got that workbook, and it's a part of our daily operating procedure. Okay. Now we have to create some messaging. What does that mean? Again, they're not knocking on our door.
Right.
Saying, here's my wallet, take my money, you can have what you have, right? Okay. I want to buy it. So we have to reach out to them.
Okay.
So the next step to implement and execute and actually create value in the form of motivated prospects ready to enter your evaluation cycle or buying cycle is to create that core brand message.
Yes.
So a core brand message is a very simple framework of who you are, who you serve, what problem they have, why they have it. There's essentially 11 steps to clarity that we'll talk about in a future episode. That is your platform for which to outreach to that ideal customer prospect to get the conversation started. So step one, download the workbook, complete the exercise, reach out to us if you have any questions at all.
It's free.
It is free.
It's free.
And we'll work with you on this. We want you to be successful. It's not a money grab. We want you to understand how to do this right. Yeah. We want everyone to understand how to do this right. And trust me, freaking buyers and your target market audience, they want you to do it right. Okay?
So you can stop sending them those dumb AI-generated emails asking them to jump on a call next week.
Trust me, they want you to know it.
Yes.
We want you to know it. You need to flip and know it, okay? So this is the real world, most practical way to do that. So you have this now. Okay, now you have to create that core brand message that gets you engaged with that audience. So the core brand message is the stepping stone to transform, translate, telegraph your message from everything you know about your target audience that puts you in a position to be seen as a credible ally, as opposed to just somebody trying to peddle some wares and get a meeting on a calendar. Yeah, it's someone that your audience sees as credible, that knows what they're thinking about, worried about, spending most of their time on right now.
Yes.
And puts you in a position to have that conversation to help them out.
Okay. All right, let's bring it around. Situations change. Build your initial ICP, craft your core brand message to attract, inform, engage. What else?
Bottom line, the only constant is change.
Yes.
These are not static assets.
Yes.
They will evolve. Don't get into analysis paralysis. If you don't know a specific element about your audience, you'll find out about it later. Just tag that and say, don't know enough yet, got to go figure that out. And in figuring it out, don't ask for an interview. Okay?
Yes.
Make an observation, use your organic intelligence to prompt some AI tool to figure out what's going on with them right now and find out specifically what that company did or what that person did, and make a presumption as to why with your organic intelligence.
Yes.
And then lead with that. Hey, I saw you did this, and I think that's a trend that we're seeing a lot. Love to hear your perspective on it.
And you noted earlier, keep it short.
Keep it
like
short.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Fill the gaps.
Yes. Yes. Windshield time. Like, figure out a way.
That's it.
All right. And for the love of God, download the Target Market Workbook.
You need it. Trust me.
All right. On behalf of Celerant, I'm Ben Wiggins. On behalf of Proclaim, I'm Ben Wiggins. He's Kenan Rappuchi. Thank you again for tuning in to the Revenue Recipe. We love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.